that 1.7% really bothers him. Just so you know. You know? I'm thinking 1.7, man, that's pretty good. He needs it to be 0. So, anyway, thanks, Tanny, for all you do, and thanks for the work you've done in our church. Part of today is really just to talk about, some of my dreams, some of my desires, where we're headed, and we're going to look at a biblical account, a historical account with about 3 kings, basically. And how I discovered this and decided to share it with you today is in August, you know that I took some time just to pray and think and study and dream and all those things. And so I did. I sat down and I started thinking about all the things that we've accomplished the past couple of years since I've been lead pastor, and I was really excited about some of the changes, some of the shifts, some of the ways of thinking that have been different, the things that we've accomplished, the things that we've focused on. And so as you do that, though, you always start to list the things that you haven't accomplished. The like to be accomplished list. How do we complete some things? And I'm like, we haven't grown to the size I wanted. We haven't increased giving to the level that I thought. We haven't experienced the life change at the pace that I wanted. And you start to think these things, and you wonder, the churches, people come, people go. Why do people leave? Why don't people stay? You start asking all of these questions. And I'm sure that you do the same thing in your life as well. Maybe you have something really big in your life that you really want, you've been trying to accomplish. Maybe you still don't understand, for example, you've done everything that you thought you could do, but you don't understand why you haven't landed the dream job that you've wanted for so long. Or maybe you've changed a lot in your life, but you keep going back to the same struggle with the same addiction over and over and over again. Maybe you think, man, I wish my marriage was happy. I wish it was fulfilling. I wish it was fun, but we can't seem to get over our selfishness. Maybe you keep trying to pay off debt, but every time you turn around, you're thinking, I don't think I'm paying money on it, but I haven't paid anything down. I still have the same amount of debt. Maybe you have some sort of emotional hurt and pain that you are striving to get over and overcome, but man, it keeps tripping you up. It keeps slowing you down. It keeps consuming you. And so I want us today to learn, I want us to be reminded, I guess, of this concept that we can believe God can do impossible things. That we can believe this. And so I want us to look at this Old Testament historical account. It's basically of 3 kings, and these 3 kings have well-trained and they have well-skilled armies, and they've set out and they want to destroy an entire nation called the Moabites. And so we're going to pick up this account in 2 Kings chapter 3. If you have a Bible, turn there, and let's read together, starting at verse 9. Verse 9 says this: So the king of Israel set out with the king of Judah and the king of Edom, and after a roundabout march of 7 days, roundabout means they were lost. And so they just went in circles for 7 days. And so after a roundabout march of 7 days, the army had no water for themselves or for the animals with them. What? Exclaimed the king of Israel. Has the Lord called us 3 kings together only to hand us over to Moab? All right, you with it so far, right? All right, so we have these 3 kings, and they're with their 3 armies, and they've set out, and what they're going to do is they're going to fight the Moabites. They want to take over the Moab country. They're prepared for this. They're strong. They're skilled. They're prepared for battle. And so they're marching there. They want to get there. And so all of these armies, however, are brought to a complete standstill. They can't go on. Why? They don't have any water. I love God and how God baffles humans sometimes, because He likes to baffle all of humans' wisdom, all of human strength. They thought they were pretty strong. They thought they were pretty good. They thought they were prepared. And so they go out, but they roundabout for 7 days, and they can't find any water. And water stops them. Their animals are going to die, and the troops, they're going to get thirsty, and they need water to survive. And so without the basic need of water, the entire army is utterly weak. And so the kings can command nearly everything, and they can command almost anything because they're the kings, but they sure can't command rain to appear. They can't demand the clouds to come. They can't call water from nowhere. And so these kings, they stand back, and instead of initially calling on God, what do? They blame God. Look what God did. He brought us out here in the middle of nowhere, and now the Moabites are going to take us down because we're too weak, because we don't have water. How could God do this to us? We're going to be destroyed by the Moabites. Look at verse 11. But Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there no prophet of the Lord here, that we may inquire of the Lord through him?" An officer of the king of Israel answered, "Elisha, son of Shaphat, is here. He used to pour water on the hands of Elijah." So Jehoshaphat said, "The word of the Lord is with him." So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom, they all went down to see him. So Jehoshaphat, he has no need for God up to this point. He is the child of Ahab and Jezebel, who Elijah confronted, if you remember. And so the kings, all of a sudden, although they had no need for Elisha, have a need for him because they came up short and couldn't control water. They prepared for battle. They assembled for battle. They traveled for battle. But now they couldn't find any water anywhere. And only then, when the animals and the men start dying of thirst, did they decide, hey, you know what? It might be a good idea that we call on God. Maybe. So the kings inquire about a prophet, and we're introduced to this person named Elisha because they realized that only God could make it rain. Only God could bring rain so that they could have water. And isn't that a lesson for us to constantly remind ourselves of, that after we've done everything, and only after we've done everything we're capable of doing, we must remember on our knees to ask God to do what only God is capable of doing. Now Elisha's been pretty quiet because they've had no need for a prophet. Elisha is a pretty incredible prophet who doesn't get a ton of attention because Elijah usually gets most of the attention. But it's interesting because Elisha has done almost double what Elijah had done. And so Elisha, he was traveling with the army, not because he was necessarily needed, because that's what prophets did. And so he's traveling, he's on the outside of the camp, and he is found. And they approach him and they say, "Listen, we need some water." Look at verse 13. Elisha said to the king of Israel, "What do we have to do with each other? You no good, rotten, whatever. Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother." "No," the king of Israel answered, "because it was the Lord who called us 3 kings together to hand us over to Moab." He's still kind of whining here a little bit, right? And Elisha says, "As surely as the Lord Almighty lives, whom I serve, if I did not have respect for the presence of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, I would not look you even to notice you." I love that, because Elisha's got so few words. He's so quiet, not very bold at all, seems to be a little fear-stricken. Did you sense that? He's got some boldness, he's got some courage, and instead he's saying, "Listen, I don't have any need for you. All of a sudden you need God, and so you come and find me? All of a sudden you can't do something on your own, and you've decided now's the right time for you to have a little God in your life. For years you've ignored Him, but now all of a sudden when you want something, when you need something, you come find the prophet and you say, 'I need something,' and he's kind of laying in on him and he's saying, 'Shame on you for being this way. Shame on you for thinking this way. Now you want some God in your life. Now you want to do it God's way, but for a long time you've just ignored Him.'" Reminds me of Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 that says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." You know, sometimes we forget what the truth is. And the truth is that I can't expect God's blessing until I'm willing to do things God's way. That I can't expect God to bless if I'm not willing to do it the way God would desire me to do it. And so the troops are thirsty. The animals need water. The kings are asking Elisha for help. And so before Elisha says too much, you get verse 15. Look at this. "But now bring me a harpist." Why? And where'd the harpist come from? I mean, here's Elisha. He's laying into the kings. He's saying, listen, what is your deal here? What's going on? You're ignored. Maybe he's thinking, you know what, I need some peaceful music to calm down so I can really prophesy on behalf of the Lord. And so I want to do something. Dave, would you come up here for me? Everybody give Dave a nice, real warm round of applause. I do this, but I just don't know how to play the piano. So I asked Dave if he had a harp and he knew how to play a harp, and I couldn't believe you couldn't. I was just shocked that he didn't have a harp like up in the closet in his office or something. So here's what I want to do, because this is what I think is happening. Elisha's getting ready to prophesy. He's getting ready to say some things on behalf of God, and he needs some emphasis here. So, for example, I got these 4 phrases from a guy. This is what he said. He said, listen to this. You can do it. You can make it. Don't give up, no matter what. Man, that's inspiring, isn't it? Come on. Wasn't that inspiring? But Dave, play a few keys for me. Watch this. Yeah, go for it. Now hold on. You can do it. You can make it. Don't give up, no matter what. See? Did you feel it? Did you see what happened? I said the exact same thing, but you put Dave on the piano, man. And it made those 4 little phrases pretty powerful, didn't it? So I think Elisha's like, listen, I've got the Word of God here. Bring me a harpist. You know? And this is what he says, listen. While the harpist was playing, the hand of the Lord came upon Elisha. And he said, this is what the Lord says. Go and make a valley full of ditches. For this is what the Lord says, you will see neither wind nor rain, yet this valley will be filled with water, and you, your cattle, and the other animals, they're going to drink. This is an easy thing for the Lord. He will also hand Moab over to you. Pretty cool, huh? And here's Elisha. Give Dave a round of applause. That was awesome, Dave. Thank you. I mean, Elisha's there, and he's telling these kings, he's like, listen, this is an easy thing for God. This is an easy thing for God. He can make it rain. He can bring the rain. He can hand the Moabites right over into your hands. But what do you need to do? He says, go and make this valley full of ditches. Did you hear it? I mean, these kings are hearing something that is as meaningful, as promising, and it is as relevant to us today as it was to the kings then. We call it faith. We call it audacious, bold, courageous faith. We've talked about faith a lot this year when we went through the faith series, the Faith Heroes series. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. And so Elisha, he tells the kings, he says, go into this valley and make this valley full of ditches. And Elisha tells the kings, you need water. You need water for your troops. You need water for the animals. This is an easy thing for God. And one more thing, it's easy for God to hand over the Moabites into your hand. The water need is easy for God to solve. Why? Because nothing is too difficult for God. Nothing's too difficult for God. And it makes me stop for a moment, and it makes me ask some questions like, what are we asking God to do in this church and through this church? Maybe in your own life, you're finding yourself thinking, man, we have this need. What is it that you're asking God to do in your life? What are you asking God to do through your life? And I've come to this realization maybe that if I'm not intimidated by the need or the desire, then it's probably intimidating to God. If I'm not overwhelmed by what I need and the desires of my heart, then it's potentially insulting to God. I mean, God desires for us to ask Him for big things. God is big, is He not? He's capable of anything, is He not? Nothing is too difficult for Him, right? But did you notice? The very first instruction that Elisha gives to these kings has nothing to do with water. What's their need? Water. What's their desire? Water. Did you notice the instruction has nothing to do with water? The instruction is, go and make this valley full of ditches. I mean, it's the opposite of water. Have you ever dug a ditch? It's dirty. It's hot. It's exhausting. Sometimes it can feel never ending. Ask some of our Mexico students who dig I just lost the word. Septic system hole. That's what I'm trying to say. For a septic system, right? In this red Mexico clay, and it's exhausting. It's time consuming. You can spend a ton of time, but it has nothing to do with water. How many of you would love to see water come into your life? Man, I long to see water flood into this church. I mean, how many of you want your life to be filled? And I realize that sometimes those needs are intimidating. I realize that they're there, but I'm coming to the realization that they wanted this land to be filled with water, but the instruction that was there had nothing to do with water. It had everything to do with a shovel. Had everything to do with a shovel. I mean, do you want to see your life filled with water? Do you want to see our church filled with water? Then Elisha's basically saying, pick up the shovel. Start digging some ditches. Dig ditches in preparation for what God is only capable of doing. I mean, we think about this, don't we? I mean, I've come to the realization that I can't save you. I can't save people. And as a matter of fact, you can't save people either. Who saves people? But man, I can dig as many ditches as I possibly can to prepare God to save people. You know what I mean? You want something in your life? Do you desire something in your life? Maybe only God can make that thing happen in your life, but you are capable of digging ditches in preparation for God to do that great thing in your life that you desire, that you want. I mean, this is what James was talking about when he wrote faith without works is what? It's dead. And the writer of Hebrews says faith is the assurance of things hoped for, and it's believing in the things that we haven't seen yet. We have to prepare for God's blessings. We have to prepare our faith. We must prepare now. We must prepare immediately. We must prepare actively. And we must always pray and ask God to bring the rain. But let's be honest. Digging a ditch isn't very fun, is it? Digging a ditch is exhausting. It's dirty. You know another issue with digging ditches? Is while we're digging ditches in our own life, while we're digging ditches in our church family, we're looking at everybody else's highlight reel. I mean, we're looking at the people who seem to have life great, right? And we start comparing ourselves to them. We think, look how awesome they have it. Or look at the church up the street or across the country and look what they're doing. I mean, if we could only be like that church. You maybe think, if I only had a job like that person. But here's the problem. We compare our behind-the-scenes life. We compare our behind-the-scenes life with somebody else's highlight reel. That's what we do. You know why? Because the behind-the-scenes isn't so glorious. The behind-the-scenes is where the work takes place. It's where the preparation is made. It's where the dirty work is done. And so we don't like to look at the behind-the-scenes. We like to look at the highlight reel of someone else's life. But we have to acknowledge, for the highlight reel to ever be produced, what's happening? The behind-the-scenes work. We've got to be consumed. We've got to be concerned about the behind-the-scenes work. The instruction was dig ditches. So in our church and in your life, you know what I want to tell you today? Dig some ditches. Dig some ditches. If you haven't started digging ditches, then pick up a shovel and start digging some ditches. If our church, if we will keep digging ditches, God's going to bring the rain. In your life, if you'll keep digging ditches, God promises to bring the rain. We never get to see the ditch digging of other people, so let's worry about our ditches. Let's be concerned about our ditches. Faith says, I'll dig ditches even when I don't see any clouds. Faith says, I'll keep digging ditches, and I'll keep digging it God's way, and I'll keep preparing for God to do great things. I'll keep doing what God's asked me to do, even when it feels redundant or filled with ambiguity. But isn't faith all about ambiguity? Isn't faith about not knowing for sure 100% what God's up to, but believing and trusting that God's going to do something great? So the question is this: what ditch do you need to dig in your life? Where is it that you need to pick up the shovel and start digging? What's the next big thing that we could do for God? What's the next big thing you could do for God? What's the next investment in someone that you could make? What is the next step that you could take to strive for something more? What ditch in your life do you need to start digging? But did you notice, as we look at this, a drop of rain never came, the water never came until they had dug a whole lot of ditches. Look at verse 20. Verse 20 says, the next morning, about the time for offering the sacrifice, there it was. No rain, no wind, no clouds, water flowing from the direction of Edom. And the land was what? The land was filled with water. If you will dig ditches, if you'll pick up the shovel and if you will dig ditches, I believe God will send the rain. If you will do what you can do, then God will do only what God can do. You won't know where it's coming from. You don't understand how He'll do it, but He promises to do it. If you'll dig ditches, God will take care of it. And so for Mountain View Christian Church, you know what? I want lives to be changed. I want to see lives changed. I want people to belong to Jesus, because I believe the greatest relationship you could have in your life is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. He died for you. He saved you, and He longs to love on you and to lavish His grace on you, and He wants to give you every opportunity to accept that gift of His. I want people to belong to each other, because I think that we're greater together than we could be apart. I think that we're more powerful and we're stronger and we can accomplish more when we're belonging to one another than if we were all separate and by ourselves. I want people at Mountain View Christian Church to grow. Man, I want ordinary people to become extraordinary followers of Jesus. I want them to grow in their relationship. I want you to grow in your relationship with Jesus Christ. It's incredible. It's the greatest relationship you could ever have. I want you to grow with each other. I want us to be a family. I want us to serve. I want us to serve each other within the church, help each other grow, and help each other belong. But I want us to serve beyond these four walls too. I want to be more than just a brick building on Cleveland Avenue in Gresham, Oregon. I want to be a place where people can find hope, and where the servants are sent out to bring that hope in real practical ways to people. Man, I want for us to serve across the globe, and I want people of all nations and all tongues to hear the message of Jesus because of faithful people at Mountain View. How are we going to do it? We're going to dig ditches. One ditch at a time. And we're going to keep digging ditches, and we're going to keep digging ditches. And you know what? We're going to keep digging ditches until it rains. I mean, I'm eager. I want so badly. I want so badly for us to have 300 consistent people, and consistent's a tricky word at church, all right? But I want 300 people consistently at both of our gatherings on a Sunday morning. You know why? It's just a goal. It's just a number I picked out of a hat. Perry Noble said it best. He said this. He said, every number has a name, every name has a story, and every story matters to God. So I have a goal. I want us to build this kitchen. You know, Tanny's right. He's right on. God says, hey, I did what I can do. I brought you the kitchen. Here it is. Mark Johnson with PGE one day, he calls up, he says, all right, it'll be there on Thursday. Could you imagine us saying, God, what are you doing? What are you thinking? What are we supposed to do with this stuff? I mean, we've been praying, haven't we? It reminds me of last week when we were looking at Acts chapter 12. You remember? The church is praying for Peter's safety and release from prison, and then Peter shows up at the house, and the servant girl's like, well, Peter's here. And they're like, he can't be. He's in jail. That's why we're praying. Girl, leave us alone. We're trying to pray here for God to do something in Peter's life. Well, Peter's outside. He's waiting to talk to you. No, it can't be. Peter's in jail. We ask God to do big things, and He does, but He still expects us to do our part. And so Mountain View, we'll keep digging ditches. And we'll dig ditches, and as we dig ditches, God's going to bring the rain. And how's the rain going to come? We're going to see people's lives change because of Jesus. We're going to see ordinary people become extraordinary followers of Jesus. We're going to see the impoverished helped and served in dignified ways in our community. We will see lonely people and bored people. They'll find relationship and they'll find purpose. And when we dig ditches, people in this community will find real hope in Jesus, and they'll find real help practical ways. And we'll keep digging ditches. And as we dig ditches, we're going to believe and we're going to trust God's going to make it rain. And you've got to do the same thing in your life. In every aspect of your life, God's called you to be faithful. He's called you to dig ditches. You want something big? You want something God big? Dig ditches. Dig ditches. Pick up the shovel and start digging some ditches. Maybe you feel like you have nothing. The lesson is clear. Start digging ditches. A valley full of ditches. When you've dug one, dig another. When you finish that one, dig another one, and expect God to do big things, because when you do your things, God does God things. He does things that only He can do. And so today, this is what I want us to do. We're going to have our prayer time. And I want to invite you to stand, and I want you to pray for some very specific people in our church. I want you to pray for our church leaders. And what I mean by that is we have pastors. If you're a pastor in the room, just raise your hand so we can see you. There's Dave, and there's Cameron. Here's me. There's Carol. If you're one of our elders in our church, you've been called to be one of our shepherd leaders and directors and guiders. Raise your hand for me. Cool. There's Sean back there. If you're one of our ministry leaders, leading one of our ministries at Mountain View, would you raise your hand and let me see your hand? Awesome. And pray for these people, would you? Pray for them. And then look around. Our expectation is that you're a servant. Listen, without you, there is no leadership role at Mountain View. That's the reality. So we need to be praying for each other, constantly praying for each other. The other group of people we need to pray for are the people who say, shovel? You want me to dig a shovel? What are you talking about? I come here and I drop in my dues and that's all I need to take care of. No, you're missing it. At Mountain View, you can't just sit. You can't just pay dues. It's bigger than that, and we need to be praying for you. And I want to challenge you specifically. Pick up a shovel and start digging with us. It'll be more fun to dig with us than to stand back and watch. Maybe you feel defeated. Maybe you have dug a lot of ditches and you're thinking, God's still not making it rain. So you threw the shovel down and you said, this is overwhelming. This is too hard. I'm sick and tired of this. And I want to pray for you today too. That maybe God would give you the strength and the courage to pick that shovel up and to keep on digging, because He still promises what He promises, and that He'll bring the rain. The last group of people I want to pray for today are the Moabites in the room. We obviously know who God was with and who God was with not. There are some of you, and you've been coming here, and you've heard me say to you, listen, Jesus loves you. He thinks you're worth it. He thinks you're so worth it that He died on the cross for you to save you, to lavish you with grace and mercy. And you hear that, but you're still scared. You're scared to say, Jesus, fine, I'm all in. I'm all yours. I want to live my life for you. Listen, at some point, there's going to be a battle. What army are you going to be a part of? You have to answer that question. And I want to pray for you today. And I want to challenge you that if you're questioning and you desire that relationship, but you haven't gone forth, man, talk to me. Talk to one of our pastors. Talk to one of our leaders. Talk to somebody before you leave today, all right? So let's stand together and let's pray. I want to invite you, like we do every Sunday, that if you'd like to come forward for prayer time, you're more than welcome to do that. Come now.